What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of SSPN Postgame, Ethan. I know this is a loss against the Rockets, but one, it's preseason, and that's really the only example. That's really the only excuse. Oh, and Wembanyama didn't play. That was the other big one that I was forgetting. Trey and Devin as well. Obviously, they didn't have Jalen Green, which is why I actually thought this was a pretty decent game to evaluate, Ethan, for a couple
Mhm.
reasons. Obviously, we saw Keldon Johnson for the first time, and then secondly, we just kind of got to see what the team would look like offensively and defensively without Wembanyama on the court. And I don't want to dive into things, too deep, but I gotta say, I think Zach looked, really good, whenever it comes to his physicality. Of course, he stretched the floor as well. He's not going to do all the same things that Wembanyama did, but you could tell he put some pressure on, like, hey, when he doesn't play, there's going to be some other things that may open up for my game, like his hook shot. And just really the threes. We didn't really see too much other than that from Zach. I will say him crashing the offensive boards as well. I thought he did a great job of that tonight. But I don't want to just, give my whole breakdown on the game just to start here, Ethan. But those were some things that stuck with me. And I'm sure some people might be wondering, you look a little different today, Ethan, but you're still going to sound great and be here with us. So I'm going to dish it to you. What were your thoughts on tonight's game?
For the first 3.5 quarters, it was a really solid game from the Spurs. It felt like we were in control pretty much the entire time, even keeled. It felt like the Rockets were getting a little frustrated with our defensive presence, as well as maybe not getting some of the calls they were expecting. So, I thought I was going to be over the moon coming into this recap, Jude, and there were a lot of positives. Like I don't want to say like there weren't any, but that last like 6 minute stretch was really tough to watch, where we just really couldn't find a basket. Felt like nobody wanted to be the guy to take the last shot, and then defensively we just couldn't stop anybody. But take that with a grain of salt as well. That lineup that was in was probably not going to play all that much. And like you alluded to, a lot of positives from guys like Zach, like Jeremy, even though he struggled at times, kind of being that facilitator. We'll get into it in a second. Cedi
Right.
Osman looked great. Keldon looked really solid. Like there are definitely a lot of positives to take away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to keen in on your point there when it comes to the end of the game, kind of like, and this is kind of the case for really all the preseason games, but especially this one, considering the guys who were out. Kind of around like that 3 minute mark at around the third quarter, I caught myself being like, okay, I'm not really going to take anything like too drastic away from this point on. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah.
mean? And not to, I guess, well, just to be blunt, I mean, Cam Whitmore was the most talented guy out there in the fourth quarter, and
Yeah.
he led him to victory. I mean, obviously some other guys made some plays, but it was really him with that three and some other shots kind of down the stretch there. I remember like with about 2 minutes left, they were on a 12-0 run, and that was when they had taken the 1 point lead and just ran away with it.
Mhm.
Um, I don't really have too much to take away on that. I mean, our lineup was what it was. We had Cedi out there. We had Dom actually
Right.
got taken out at the end. He
Mhm.
was in there for a little bit, of course. We had Khem Birch. We'll get to that. We saw Khem Birch for the first time tonight. So, we got to talk about that. Blake was out there and he had
Mhm.
some struggles tonight as well, which is really unfortunate because I know it's just 3 preseason games, but it felt like that first Thunder game, you know, what he was talking about, and you and I texted about this. You've mentioned this before on some of our post games, just talking about how him slowing down. How he mentioned that in his press conferences in the preseason and training camp, and how that's like really what he needs to do. I felt like we saw that in the OKC game, and unfortunately, I think in the past 2 games since, we've kind of seen a regression in a sense for Blake. It's just 2 preseason games, and I think he's probably going to be in Austin most of the year regardless. But
Mhm.
it really, like you said, this is why you don't want to take too much away from one preseason game, because watching that Thunder game, it felt like he had taken a step forward. And as we've seen in these past 2 games, uh, I don't know if that's the case. He's still working, to put it nicely.
Yeah, I agree and I disagree slightly. Agree in the sense that his scoring definitely took a drop off, and as far as like, knowing where to be and like high IQ play, absolutely has not been the same as it was in that first game. But I still feel like he took a slight progression as far as
Okay,
playmaking and seeing some windows there. Um,
I agree with that.
Like, I think he made a lot of good decisions tonight. Shots weren't falling. It doesn't help when Julian, who was supposed to be the scorer a lot of those times in the second half, goes 1 for 9, 0 for 7 from three-point land.
Yeah.
And then Blake himself went 2 for 10 from the field and missed the 1-3 that he took. But he still managed to get 4 assists and plays chippy defense. But you're right. I mean, the progression we would have hoped would have been a little bit more than it was.
Yeah, yeah. But, that's kind of why I mentioned in our last one, as much as it's frustrating right now, he's a 20-year-old player,
Sure.
and we'll see if this continues, then that will be the indictment on him. But he's got 2 more years on his rookie deal. I'm sure we're going to stick him in Austin for most of the year again. It's hard for me to write him off right now just because I trust the Spurs development staff so much.
Yeah.
But I think kind of what you hinted at there at the end, whenever it comes to just seeing like a significant improvement in kind of all of his areas. You know what I'm saying? I think that's a really good point, because I even mentioned that in, I believe, the OKC postgame, talking about the dump off. I think there was a dump off to Cedi in that one that was a miss, but it was still a great read and something he didn't do last year. But definitely still a work in progress, I think, is the point we're trying to get across here with Blake. From the fourth quarter. But let's jump into some of the starters, Ethan. I talked about Zach. I talked about his hook shots, his physicality, the way that he crashed the boards offensively and defensively. And the other thing that I noticed from Zach tonight, and I know we've watched 2 games from him so far, maybe it was just because Wemby wasn't on the floor, and it's like he's such a physical freak that anything physically, I just notice Wemby whenever he's on the floor. Whenever he's out there, just because of him being a physical specimen. Tonight, when I looked at Zach, I felt like this was the best he had looked physically, like muscular wise, like toned. I just really noticed that tonight in comparison to his past 2 years here in San Antonio. But it makes sense whenever it comes to, of course, his injury history, and this really being his first full healthy offseason in a while. So tell me what you thought of Zach tonight.
I echo everything that you just said. He was physical the entire night, fought for extra possessions, fought for extra rebounds. I took notes a little bit for this game, and he had 2 possessions specifically where he fought for extra offensive rebounds. He was just an energizer for everybody, and fighting for those extra possessions goes a long way, especially when that was really the focus from last game, was when we got out rebounded 35-50. And let's see, what did we get? What were the rebounds? 49-51 in favor of the Rockets this game. So definitely an improvement. It's probably an emphasis. I know it was an emphasis because Zach said that was a majority of their film time this week in practice.
I saw that too.
Looking at rebounds and extra possessions like that. So I agree with you. And without Wemby there being the only low post presence on the team, he went back to being the hub of our offense. And there were some moments in the second quarter where, obviously Trey's not playing, Devin's not playing, Wemby's not playing, but we did not have Zach in the game. We did have Jeremy and we did have Keldon.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But without Zach in the game, our offense really struggled, and the Rockets got back into the game. But as soon as he got injected back into the lineup, we went on a 10-0 run. So I don't know if that's a stat that's measurable. I know it's like 18 points, 8 rebounds, not like the greatest game in the world box score wise, but he only played a half. And if you watch the game, you could see how incredibly dominant he was, as far as just everything revolved around him offensively. And then defensively, he was just going at Alperen Şengün and Jabari Smith Jr. He held them to 3 points and 9 points respectively, and they really couldn't find a rhythm. So this was definitely his best game of the preseason, and maybe, even including last season, like you were talking about.
Yeah, at least when it comes to that, crashing the boards and physicality. And, I don't want to, like, Alperen Şengün is going to be a really good player. So is Jabari Smith Jr., and they've got a lot of height and size. But with that being said, in comparison to the rest of the league, that's why we've used the Rockets as an example in a lot of our conversations whenever we talk about playing small ball over the years. You know what I mean? And this is a game where Zach should be able to impose his physical will. You know what I mean? And you were saying how you're like, I don't know if I necessarily have a stat for to represent his impact on offense. I got one for you here, Ethan. He was the leader on the team in assists tonight. I know it's only by one ahead of Blake with 5, but still, I mean, there was one, I believe it was like a cross court pass out of the post on like the left block that he dished to Keldon for a 3 on the right wing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That was a really good read out of the post that, kind of gave us flashes of the mixtape that kind of came out before the season of his highlights of bounce passes out of the post from last season. I think that's only gotten better, and I completely agree with you. And I think it just it gives us another example of why Pop made the comments he did about Zach after last season. And the one final thing, I know you got something here
I got
too,
one more thing.
but I got one final thing on Zach also. It just ties into your point when you were talking about how what he said in the most recent interview that he did on the Spurs YouTube, the most recent press conference he did. He was talking about how their emphasis after that last game with the way that they got out rebounded, they were like, we would have won by way more if we would have just even kept it to like a 5 rebound advantage for the Heat. So the fact that he like really took that film study personally and attacked it in the game afterwards is just another testament to the type of player Zach is, and gives me more confidence in him.
Two last things about Zach. One, 80% from the field, so really an efficient night as far as scoring the basketball, and was taking it to every defender that tried to guard him, no matter who it was. It didn't matter. It was Swiss cheese. It was barbecue chicken. But secondly, post position tonight was incredibly advantageous for Zach. He was drawing fouls left and right, and guys could not guard him. Like he was getting in the middle on every fast break every single time and getting foul calls and getting their team in foul trouble. And we were getting into the bonus early in that first half.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo what you said, and we kind of already said all my other stuff on Zach. So I guess we can move on to kind of the other main character, if you will, tonight, and that was Keldon Johnson. I know it's so funny because when I look at the box score here, Ethan, I'm like, he shot 4 for 13. Like it didn't even. Maybe that's just me being like biased towards him, but watching the game, it really didn't feel like that. I guess like now that I see it in the box score, I'm like, okay, I can see that a little bit. But to me, I just chalk that up as this is his first game back. You saw him go out of the game immediately after he checked out in the third quarter, and Bill and Sean were talking about how he's probably going to go get treatment on that hamstring. Not to make an excuse for it, but it's like he is dealing with a little bit of something right now. I'm glad the shooting looks good, like specifically the 3-point shooting. I think he's going to find his way a little bit more. I don't want to just like make the same excuse as last year, but Trey, Devin, and Wemby weren't playing tonight, so this kind of was the same situation as last year.
Yeah.
So I don't really like. I thought talk about the and one he had and his handle. I thought his handle looked a lot better tonight. He found a way to get 4 boards, 2 steals, 4 assists. A couple of those plays were on Dylan Brooks as well. He had that big swat as well. So, I mean, really, when it comes to Keldon, like we saw Devin shoot bad in the first game and then shoot great in the second game. Like, the two main things coming into this season for Keldon was defense and ball handling, right? So, I mean, I saw improvements there tonight.
Yeah, I'm not even going to address the 11 points thing. That's not going to be a consistent thing. It's just rust, like you're talking about. The two things that were most noticeable from Keldon for me, like you said, improvements in ball handling, which had an effect on his playmaking skills. He was really making the right pass and finding the open guys. I know only 4 assists, but if you watch the game, there were times where he was the primary ball handler, coming off of screens and just making the right read, which – not to say that he didn't do that last year, but it wasn't a strength. And it looks
he averaged 2.2 or 2.9 assists last year. Not to interrupt you, but just to your point.
Thank you. And then also, what was it? The defense, help defense particularly. Like he sat in the chair, but that might not be his strength ever, simply because of his physical tool set to just be like a one-on-one lockdown guy. But as far as IQ, knowing where to be, rotations, and helping guys at the right time. He had, I think, 2 steals. Yeah, 2 steals and that block. He said, give me that. I won't say it because we're trying to get monetized, but he said, give me that blank. Reminiscent of old school Mello. And there were 3 of those kind of blocks back to back to back, but we won't get into that. Only one of them belonged to Keldon Johnson, but always brings the energy. Once he gets the rust off, like you said, and gets over this slight tweak to his hamstring, I'm not worried about him in the slightest.
Yeah. I'm looking at the rest of this roster, Ethan. We could talk a little bit about Jeremy, but I mean, well, that is something we need to talk about. But really, for him, it's kind of the same story. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to repeat ourselves a little bit. I think
Mhm.
the other person who stood out for me tonight, and I think you'll agree, you mentioned him a little bit again, and we talked about this last video, and I didn't think that I could get like higher on his role, if that makes sense. But dude, Shetty.
Yes. Yes.
Like, you already know what I'm saying. Look,
It's my
Wembanyama's
dude.
fingers down there, and
Yep.
and I know I keep switching back and forth, but it's so I can put y'all's comment up and we don't cover each other. So if you're wondering why we're doing that, but he says Shetty might be the best wing shot blocker in the league. Tell me about Shetty, Ethan.
Dude, Cedi, I mean, we've only seen him for 3 games, right? But this guy, I am loving him more and more as each day passes. I mean, for one, his personality is great. He wants to be in San Antonio. He loves San Antonio. If you haven't watched his press conferences, go watch him. He speaks so highly of the organization and Pop and the type of basketball that we play. But he just has no deficiencies, Jude. Like he can literally do everything, and
I don't
nothing
disagree.
nothing is amazing. Nothing is Showtime. You know, he's not going to be an all-star, but he's a very capable shooter. He has shown us that he can take guys off the dribble and has a little bit of an in-between game. He is much stronger and much more physical than I ever gave him credit for back when he was with the Cavs. He can play the 3 or the 4 or even the 2, honestly. And then defensively, he's that guy, Jude. How many
Hmm.
blocks did he have tonight? 2 blocks? 2 blocks. And one of them was a give me that blank again, reminiscent of Melo. I love that. I hope he continues saying that because literally we had 3 blocks back to back to back where all 3 guys said the same phrase, and I am for it. But I'm going to pass it back over to you while I let these dogs out that I am dog sitting for because they will not stop scratching the door and they're right next to me.
No worries. You go for it, my guy. Alrighty, we got Ethan off screen, so we got a nice little. I mean, I'm talking to Casper here, but y'all are with me. Wembanyama's fingers, I see you in there. His shooting needs improvement, but honestly, his form looks perfect. I completely agree with that. I think he's just missing some shots right now. Like Shetty's a proven shooter.
Yeah,
From his time in Cleveland, he's especially with the wackiness of our lineups being different every game, and he's the one that's been playing every single time. I
yeah,
know which comment you're looking at, Ethan.
yeah.
Let me pull it up. You didn't see it earlier. We have to acknowledge it. For those of y'all listening on podcast, our boy Tanner says that's how I be treating Ethan in pickup games in regards to Shetty's blocks. But Ethan's rubbing his hands together. He might have something else to say about that. Oops, almost put a comment up there. Y'all probably got a glimpse of that one. That's our first curse word that's probably pulled up on stream.
What was it? Was it the
No,
give
it
me?
was just the gimme that, you know what. We won't say it out loud, but we just put it up there, a little tease for y'all.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyways, regardless of that, going back, so we were talking about Shetty there. His playmaking. That's the other thing. He takes the
Yes.
ball up the floor way more than I expected as well.
Point Chetty. I had that written down. I'm sorry I didn't bring it up. But yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, because he's a foreign player, I mean, he understands how to play basketball. It's not just because he's a foreign player.
right.
He's a smart guy, but like there were times it was like him and Jeremy basically taking turns on who was going to be the primary ball handler, bringing it up the court, and they're both our forwards, which I
Yeah,
think is hilarious. And it looks good. It's not at all difficult to watch. He's got a nice handle to
yeah,
him.
yeah. I completely agree. I have no other comments there. I guess we can talk about Jeremy now.
Okay.
I mean, on the stat sheet, he had a really solid game. 4 steals, 13 points, 2 boards, no assists, but that's probably what people will look at with all of the point guard talk, right? But as we
Yeah.
mentioned in our last live stream, with the nature of the Spurs offense, and as we just mentioned, like Shetty's taking it up sometimes. And speaking of that Zach interview, go look at it there too. He talks about how anybody can really take it up. I think the main thing you alluded to earlier in the stream was just his handle and with how old he is, or excuse me, with how big he is, with his frame. Like that's just, he's going to get loosey goosey with it sometimes. And we saw that again tonight. But we also saw some pretty plays, man. Really, I don't have too much else to say about Jeremy at point guard other than what we've already said and kind of what Pop and him have said. And that's that sometimes it's going to look great and sometimes it's going to look pretty. But the more I've been thinking about this, Ethan, and we mentioned this in our last podcast, but not necessarily in this way. I think playing Jeremy at the point guard, Ethan, might be less about offense, which I should have already known this,
Yeah.
and way more about defense. That ties into what Zach was talking about, and Pop in his pregame presser before this game. He joked, he was like, look, I don't know what to tell y'all. He's like, I'm not even trying to be a wise guy as I have in the past. Like, we just sucked defensively last year. Like, anything we do this year is going to be better because we were literally 30th in every category. So I think that decision, because think about it, like, really, you've got two guys who are guards in Keldon and Devin, and then you've got two forwards in Jeremy and Wemby, and then you got Zach. Like, it's really not that crazy.
No, it's not at all. And I agree with you. This is a defensive decision, and it helps that Jeremy has upside as a point guard. I'm not going to lie to anybody. I've been an advocate for Jeremy at point guard. This wasn't a great game for him
Right.
at point guard. I mean, he definitely struggled, and it didn't help that he was being defended by Dillon Brooks and Amen Thompson, who are both really, really good perimeter defenders. Even if you hate Dillon Brooks, like we both do, he's a solid physical
Right.
athlete,
No,
and
absolutely.
he gets to the
Absolutely.
guys, and so that obviously that has an effect on Jeremy. And he's still learning. This is literally only his second game truly playing point guard. I mean, unless you want to count that brief 3-game stretch last season when
Right.
Jude was injured, but I'm going to count this as his first real attempt at point guard. And there, like you said, flashes every once in a while where it's like, oh, that's why he's playing point guard. Like, this guy's the second coming of Scottie Pippen. And then there are other moments where it's like, oh, good God, get the ball out of his hand. Like, hurry, somebody go help him. I'm not worried about it. It's going to be a long season of many different struggles. Throw him in the fire now. Defensively, it's very difficult to stop. And like you said, it's point guard by committee for the most part. So let's just let it fly. And I'm going to get those damn dogs.
You're good. You're good. The other thing that I was gonna say to Ethan as he's back out there. See, but he's a real trooper for y'all being out here on this live stream through that. He's on his MacBook too, but he's got a good quality setup anywhere. But talking a little bit more about Jeremy, the crazy thing, I mean, he still had a really good game on the stat sheet. Like, if you were to just look at that, basketball is much more than that. But it's like, if he's gonna have a bad game and still be efficient, like that's another good thing. And Wembanyama, I see you in here as well. I would love a setup of Jeremy setting screens for Wemby with Devin on one corner and Keldon on the other corner with Jeremy rolling. Exactly. That's the type of stuff that we've drooled over in the offseason. And another kind of note on Jeremy too that I'll talk about with Ethan when he gets back here in a second. Here he is. I literally just called you on cue, bro. Is that excuse me, I clicked the wrong comment there. But what I was going to ask you, of course, I'm losing my train of thought. Oh no, this is it. Like, the other thing is too, Jeremy was playing without Wemby, and like Wemby, it's not just Jeremy. Like, you can use that for anybody on the team, but it still applies. Like that's another thing that will help, I think, just everything. Now, he's still going to get picked up by Dillon Brooks and Amen Thompson and other good perimeter defenders throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there's just so much attention that Wemby draws that like that will help him as well. The other thing I said while you were off stream, Ethan, is I was just saying, like, considering when we watched this on the floor, you and I both agreed this was a strugglesome game. But on the flip side, on the stat sheet, it looks like a pretty solid game for Jeremy. Yeah. So I was just saying that's the nuance of basketball. It's not one or the other. But at the same time, it's like, hey, if he's going to have a game that, looks strugglesome to us, if you will, at least he's going to look good on the stat sheet too,
Couldn't agree more. Fair assessment. And he didn't have Devin or Wemby like you were saying. So.
Hey, Mr. Z, don't worry. Tanner's just a good friend to Ethan's outside of SSPN. So that's just their relationship. But we appreciate you. You're a real one. I'm trying to think if I have. Oh, well, okay. Do we have any other serious takeaways before we get into the fun stuff?
No, not really.
Yeah, I don't think I do either. I think maybe the two little tidbits I have, Champagny shot bad tonight, but I mean,
yeah,
I'm not like out on him either. I mean, this is really, I think more what that tells me, Ethan, is that Doug's going to be probably, not to just make a big takeaway from this game, but probably the last episode I was talking about, maybe, there'll be a competition between Doug and Champagny for that backup three. just when it comes to experience and consistency, that's going to
Mm.
be Doug. But Chambeni is still on a great contract, and we can continue to develop him and is a really solid third stringer. We talked about that with Mamu actually earlier today when we texted. He didn't have a crazy game. He did hit 1-3. That's really all I have to say about Mamu. But those are two guys that we're happy to have as third stringers. But the last like actual takeaway I have, Ethan,
Mhm.
is Cedi. I know in the 9 minutes we saw he's playing against their fourth stringers, and he still fouled the first defensive possession. But
Mhm.
dude, he's those two blocks, like, and what we saw in summer league and what we saw in the G League Ignite last year, man. Even Sean made the comment after those two blocks. Sean Elliott, I mean, he was like, I don't know if he keeps, and I know the circumstances are very favorable for Cedi with who he's matching up against. But even Sean was like, if he keeps playing like that, and it was a joking comment, he's like, he might. We'll see how long he's in Austin. But it's like, seriously, with the physical ability, the defensive ability, and once again, the Spurs development staff, who knows? Maybe he is a guy who can become a contributor by March. That's a reach. But I would say that I definitely believe in Cedi's potential, and the fact that he's already played in the G League for a season prior gives me confidence that he can kind of develop, hate to say it, but at a faster rate than Blake per se.
I mean, there's a chance. I mean, he is very, very raw, but he could definitely be the second coming of a more in shape Boris Diaw. Like, and this guy
I
is
love it. Jacked Boris.
jacked Boris. He's literally French too. He is
Right.
incapable of making just like a basic chess pass. My guy has only fancy pass.
You're right.
He only spams double B when
Oh
he's
my gosh.
like today. He had a crazy dime. I think they missed it.
Yeah,
I don't
Blake
know who
did.
it was.
I know what
Blake
you're talking
hit a
about. The
layup,
back door, right off the
but he
dribble or off the
he looked
bounce.
like Magic Johnson. Like it was like prime time, or yeah, is it prime time? Lake Show? No, not Lake Show. What the hell was it? The
No,
80s.
you're on target.
Lake Show was the 90s. 80s. Showtime.
There you go. I think
Showtime.
you already said that.
No, I think I said prime time for
You
some reason.
did. You're right. You're right. It's okay. You're
Dion
thinking Dion's in everybody's psyche right now. Okay.
Yeah, for real. But I mean, if he can really, the Spurs development staff get with him and Austin fine tune some of those skill sets, he's got everything else. He's got the mentality, he's got the natural ability, he's got the physical tools, and he's not afraid to take shots. Like I remember I was talking about the lineup at the end of the game. Nobody wanted to take the shots. The two shots that he had were when we were trying to like stay within 1 point of the Rockets, and he took 2 threes, which he never takes threes, but he didn't even
Right.
like he just pulled up because he knew like someone's got to take this shot, and
I
he was
did
the
appreciate that.
yeah,
Like,
he was the only one not afraid to pull up. So I like his mentality. I don't know if it'll be this season, but maybe in a year or two, he's
right.
definitely ready to take on like a larger role with the team.
Yeah. I'm definitely got a lot to work through still, but I'm interested to see, like, to watch him in Austin and see how fast he progresses
Yeah,
because of the fact that he's already played a G League season. Like, that's
true.
the only thing, just because he's coming from Ignite. I'm curious to see, just like I said, how fast he progresses. Cause I think there's a chance that it could, we could start seeing some of those numbers that we saw from Charles and Dom, maybe a little bit earlier. But also, it could take a little bit longer, and I could be completely off base there. We'll just have to see. But the last two things that we have to talk about here as we wind down the show, Ethan. There's two very important players. Okay.
I'm listening.
Okay. Now he's got to. Can you hear me still?
Yes, I can.
Wow, this is awesome because I can still hear you. That's the other thing that's good.
I'm back. I'm back already. Door's right next to me.
Okay, dude, fire setup.
Thank you.
Khem Birch, he exists. He
Yes.
played minutes.
Yes, he did. And I didn't realize how actually like physically gifted that dude was. Like that is a strong specimen of a man. That's 6'8", 230-ish, I think is what.
That's what they said, and Sean was disputing that. He's like, I'm 240. He's bigger than me, and it was kind of funny because when they were zooming in on, I was like, yo, my dude's yoked.
He is
I can
very
see like how he plays center with a little bit of a height disadvantage.
You know who he reminds me of? I mean, he's way more physically gifted, but his play style and his height and what's the dude that we had for literally like 3 months? Was it last year or the year before? We got him in the DeMar trade. We traded him to Toronto. He's still there.
Not Jakob. What am I?
Not Jakob. The other guy we gave to Toronto. Thaddeus Young.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how he played. Good
Yeah.
screen setter, solid passer, good decision maker. Can fight
He's
for
like
possessions.
he's like budget Thad Young.
Yeah, budget Thad Young. But I'm just
I
glad we
didn't know there could be that, but that's very accurate, actually.
right? The backdoor cuts, the handoffs. I think it's pretty much all
Oh
the
my gosh, our Wembanyama's fingers is already done. He's already done with poor Khem. But don't worry, Wembanyama's fingers. They got to cut somebody, and I think it was pretty obvious tonight. God bless him. He had some 2 good dimes, got a good board to start, and then there were a couple turnovers. and he was playing with the backup crew, but there were a lot of moments after that where I was like, I think this is confirming that my boy's getting cut. And the last thing that I will mention is shout out to my boy Dom on that lob. Got some. He should have had an assist to Mamu too. Some good boards. He came in. I really felt like he was taking over. Then he kind of tried to go for that floater where he should have passed it, and they took him out. And he was over having a little talk with Matt Nielsen, kind of going over the game and stuff, that's the right thing that they should do. But I tweeted after I saw that flight school just expose from Don Barlow in traffic over 2 Houston Rockets. I tweeted the gif of Kevin Garnett yelling anything is possible, because that's how I felt when he dunked that.
Oh my God. I love how devoted you are to this, man. It was a nice dunk. It was a nice dunk.
You know why he had to do that, right?
Why? Why did he do that?
He had to show that out of the highlight culture league that is Overtime Elite, who out of the OTE players tonight, Ethan, had the best highlight?
I mean, Amen had a couple really good dunks.
Which ones?
Fast break, just dunks, like off steals.
Was it in air over 2 different people?
No. I don't think so.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that's my I overall, like I just said, Dom actually had some struggles there afterward.
I don't know why I'm defending Amen Thompson right now, but he hit 2 threes, and that's like not his game.
No, that was crazy. Actually, to talk about the Rockets for a little bit, we texted about that. Amen Thompson shooting tonight. You could tell it was like they hadn't watched the first. I mean, maybe they did do a film study, but like still, they didn't really respect his shooting. They were like, let him shoot, and they were like, they did not look fluky off the dribble and catch and shoot, which impressed me whenever it comes to just his projection for this season and his career moving forward, because that was really his biggest knock.
Yeah. Rockets have a nice team, dude. I hate to say it, but they might have a solid future alongside of us. But they were only missing really one dude. We had 3 very key players out, and we were basically in charge for 3.5 quarters. So things are looking up.
This kind of leads into the last thing we'll talk about tonight, Ethan. You just mentioned it. We both hate admitting it, but it's the truth. They have a nice young core. They have a solid young team. We're going to see them again on Wednesday, and we're going to see them a lot in the regular season, and we're going to see them a lot for years to come, because they're our biggest rival, and they're on the same kind of trajectory as us. And I hate to say this also, but Ime makes them better.
He does.
Regardless of all the other stuff, we know where Ime comes from a basketball perspective, and I think he's going to clean up a lot of the stuff that Steven Silas struggled with. So that's going to be a rivalry for years to come, Ethan. And we saw the tensions flare a little bit early. We saw Dylan. We saw Zach immediately walk over. We saw Keldon in there. What were your thoughts on that whole scuffle? You asked for a fight. We didn't get it, but we got pretty dang close, Ethan.
We did.
I think once Wemby plays, I think it's just going to be turned up a notch, honestly. So I'm excited for Wednesday if he plays in that game.
I need to see a little bit more, though, honestly. All Jeremy did was pull his arm a little bit. Amen got upset. That did not deserve a double T. Either way. Zach didn't deserve a T. Dylan didn't deserve a T.
I agree.
They were literally both just like they were breaking up the fight and they bumped into each other. Is literally all that happened. But I wanted to see a little bit more. I guarantee you someone's going to go after Wemby. Guarantee it on Wednesday if Wemby plays. Someone's going to try and pick on him.
It's going to be Dillon Brooks.
He might.
It's going to be Dillon Brooks.
He's going to put his head right into his junk.
But he'll just shoot. Well, okay, let me bring up the box score. Let me bring up the Houston box score so I can look at this. Look at this efficiency. Oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was. It's 2 for 6 from 3, but it's 2 for 8 overall. 4 turnovers.
4 turnovers is the bad part there.
He's better than I'll ever be at basketball. I'll admit that. Yeah. But
for you, maybe not. I mean, present company excluded.
Nice, keep talking all that. Just keep turning the ball over and bricking shots too. Dude, what's funny about Dillon Brooks is I didn't even I kind of liked it a little bit when he was on the Grizzlies, and I think it was probably just over time. We kind of saw how it went. But the main thing for me, honestly, I wouldn't care this much. It's just now he's on the Rockets, and because he's on the Rockets, it's just amped everything to 1,000. I'm like, all right, nah, let's just go. Let's go UFC style, like Wembanyama's fingers was saying earlier.
The Rockets might be the only team. I know the Spurs have had rivals for a long time, but they're the only one that I personally just absolutely hate. I know we have a rivalry with the Lakers and we have a rivalry with the Mavericks.
I'm with you, bro.
The Grizzlies, technically the Thunder. I like most of those teams. I don't have a problem. The Rockets, I don't like them. And I want to win every single time we play that team.
Me too.
I don't know what it is about them. I think it's their fans.
It's not, dude. And here's the other thing I'll tell you. It's not just us. I have a couple friends, and we're wrapping up here pretty soon, but I have a couple friends from two different, that I have a friend that's a fan of the Mavs, and I have a friend that's a fan of the Thunder. Okay. I don't have a Pelicans. Oh, well, no, I just need to call up my Louisiana family and get their opinion on this. Actually, I definitely have some Pelicans people, but I've only talked to this with my Mavs and my Thunder people, bro. They're like, bro, we don't hate y'all. They're like, we just hate the Rockets. And I'm like, bro, us too.
Rockets suck. You know what?
Oh my gosh.
You know what? Maybe I shouldn't say this. No, I will. The city of Houston sucks. That is the worst city in Texas. My hand to God. I've been to all of them. They're all pretty decent. Houston.
I got one of my one friend from high school. Other than I have some other organizations, but my one friend that I just have kind of stuck in contact with, he is a big Houston everything fan. But believe it or not, but he actually doesn't watch the Rockets. That's the funny thing. But he's not a huge. Well, he likes basketball, but he's just not a big Rockets guy. He likes the Cougars. That's because they win.
So this dog is over here scratching at
You're completely good. We're about to be done. I think this is how a lot of Spurs fans feel from Mr. Z. The Rockets are the annoying little brother we have. And it's yes, you've got your 3 titles. You had Hakeem.
2 titles. Did they win 3?
I think they have 3.
Oh, they did.
I'm pretty sure they have 3.
80s. Forgot about that.
Yeah. So you can have that. That's cool. Go Spurs, go.
Go Spurs, go. All of our highlights are just ruining their days. Anyway.
Well, we can just play the video of Wembanyama fist pumping, not getting drafted by them over and over, and they just have to cope with that. They just have to deal with the fact that he wanted the Hornets over you.
That's saying something.
Yeah, exactly. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us tonight. Don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe button below. Be sure to follow us on Twitter to stay updated with the show. You can follow us at SSPN on YT, at Jude McLaren, and at Ethan_Quintero. All that good stuff. We appreciate you guys. We'll catch y'all on Wednesday. Go Spurs, go.